Secretary General, Director Khan, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. First and foremost, good morning to everybody. Welcome to this conference. Welcome to Budapest. Welcome to Hungary. For me, it is indeed a great pleasure to open this conference, which, as we know, organized by the United Nations Organization on Drugs and Crime, with the support of the Hungarian government, and also with the cooperation of ICDT, which stands for International Center for Democratic Transition. Since the end of the Cold War, the nature of international security threats has changed significantly. Those who are old enough to have personal memories of the pre-1989 era know very well the difference. Back then, war and peace depended on the equilibrium between two military superpowers and their respective alliances they had forged or enforced. But with the end of the Cold War, that kind of determinism ended. The terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001 showed what a handful of well-organized fanatics can do. But there is also a piece of good news. We can also do much more now for peace and security. Once again, with more freedom came also more responsibility. Beyond the immediate destruction of lives and goods, the objective of the executors of 9/11 was to challenge the values and institutions on which much of our global civilization relies. The international challenge has generated international response, mostly using hard security means. Priority was given to the terrorist threats stemming from third countries as compared to home ground radicalism and violence. However, a new conflict has evolved within Europe: the colliding views on how to define our own identity. The result on several occasions has been disorientation and the questioning of traditional values in Europe, such as democracy, the rule of law, solidarity, or tolerance. For many, a newly rediscovered or reinvented identity can become a fortress to defend. This may give rise to aggressive attitudes both ways. A minority of second or third generation immigrants may fall back on what they perceive to be the identity of their ancestors, turning their back on the society in which they do not feel welcome and in which to be successful is no longer their ambition. People belonging to the receiving community, at the same time, may start regarding the presence of those who are different a problem rather than a resource. Thus, radicalism can stem from both extremes of the spectrum and pose a serious challenge to Europe's security, economic, and social fabric. Today, violent radicalism is clearly one of the most serious political and social threats. Countering terrorism is one of the few policy areas in which the European Union, where all member states and citizens unanimously solicit common action. We all agree that there is a clear link between radicalism, extremism, and terrorism. The purpose of the present conference is to highlight this link in order to promote a common platform on the importance of preventing radicalization in our societies and to raise awareness on the complexity of the situation, which clearly requires the employment of our foreign policy and the domestic and justice toolbox alike. Ladies and gentlemen, the threat posed by self-radicalization, terrorists acting alone, and newly emerging terrorist groups alike, as well as the potential of the internet to recruit terrorists and promote extremist ideologies, have prompted greater focus on prevention and on countering radicalization and violent extremism. The need for the involvement of internationally recognized global institutions to address this issue has become more and more evident. The UN Global Counter-Terrorism Strategy, adopted in 2006, explicitly refers to the role that the United Nations can play in countering the use of the Internet for the purposes of promoting terrorism. It also highlights the need to promote international solidarity in support of victims and their families, and to foster the involvement of civil society in a global campaign against terrorism. Hungary firmly believes that the United Nations play a pivotal role and has a particular responsibility in coordinating global efforts against terrorism. It is important further to strengthen the United Nations toolkit in this regard in order to ensure that the international community's efforts are endorsed and followed up by all countries. Hungary also fully supports the work undertaken by the UN Counter-Terrorism Implementation Task Force in coordinating the different UN bodies' efforts to assisting member states. Also, we are committed to give further assistance to the efforts of the Council of Europe, of the OSCE, and the European Union, which, besides the UN, all give their special and precious contribution. But everyone can be a player. My country is among the forerunners in fighting the threats to cybersecurity. The Budapest Convention on Cybercrime is the only international legal document to encourage and advance harmonization of laws on cybercrime at international level. The aim of our two-day conference is to take stock of the challenges and the possible approaches Europe can take to the prevention of terrorism through countering radicalization and violent extremism. We also would like to propose ways forward with a specific focus on the use of the Internet for terrorist purposes and on the victims of terrorism. Terrorism is also a cultural phenomenon for which fear of and hatred for the other make a fertile ground. It is therefore necessary, but not enough, to uproot the weed. We also have to sow the good seed. Thus, it is our strong belief that the respect for democratic values and human rights, political and religious tolerance, and the rule of law are our best weapons in the fight against terrorism. I wish you an excellent and successful conference, and thank you very much for your attention.